She had been putting it off for months. Not because she did not care, because she cared too much. Sitting at the kitchen table in her unit in Frankston, the Services Australia website open on her laptop, her reading glasses balanced on the tip of her nose, she had typed age pension into the search bar and found herself staring at a page so dense with rules, thresholds and qualifications that she closed the laptop, stood up and put the kettle on instead. She knew she was approaching the age. She knew she might be eligible, but she could not tell from anything she had read whether she would get it, how much it would be, or what she needed to do to find out. If that sounds like your experience, stay with me, because today I am going to explain the age pension from start to finish. Who gets it, how much it pays, and the rules that determine your number in plain language. No jargon, no assumptions, just the system. Explain the way it should have been explained
Dense
all
with
along.
rules,
Let me start with the
thresholds,
most basic
and
question.
qualifications.
Who is eligible
that she
to
closed
receive
the laptop,
age pension
stood
in
up,
Australia?
and
You need to meet 3 conditions. First, you need to have reached pension age, which under current rules is 67. That applies to everyone born after the 1st of January 1957. If you are 65 or 66 right now, you are not yet eligible. And those years between 60 and 67 are some of the most important and least understood years in the retirement system. How you navigate that gap changes everything about the next 2 decades. We go into that in detail in another video because it deserves its own full explanation. Second, you need to be an Australian resident. Specifically, you need to have been an Australian resident for at least 10 years in total, with at least 5 of those years being continuous. There are some exceptions, particularly if you have lived or worked in a country that Australia has an international social security agreement with. But for most people born and raised here, this is straightforward. Third, and this is where it gets more complex, you need to pass the means test. The means test has 2 parts, the assets test and the income test. Centrelink applies both, and whichever test produces the lower pension amount is the one that applies to you. That is worth repeating. They calculate your pension under both tests, and you receive the lower of the 2 amounts, not the higher. The lower. Let me walk you through the assets test first, because it is the one that causes the most confusion and the most anxiety. The assets test looks at everything you own, minus your debts, and compares the total to a set of thresholds. Your family home, the one you live in, is not counted. That is one of the most important rules of the system, and it surprises a lot of people. If you own your home, it is excluded from the test entirely. But almost everything else is counted. Your super, your savings, your investments, your car, your furniture, your caravan, your boat if you have one. Even the contents of your home are assessed, though they are usually valued modestly. Under current rules, and these
how
thresholds
you
are updated
navigate
on the
that
1st
gap
of July
changes
2026,
everything about the next
full
2
pension
ends.
limits for homeowners are roughly $333,000 for a single person and $499,000 for a couple. If your countable assets are below
We go
those
into that
figures,
in
you
detail in
qualify
another
for the
video
full age
because it
pension.
deserves its
Now, here's the
own
part
full
that catches
explanation.
people. If your assets are above those lower thresholds, you do not lose the pension entirely. It tapers. But every $1,000 you are over the lower threshold, your pension reduces by $3 per fortnight. That is the taper rate. $3 per fortnight per thousand.
I still
so
can't
if you are
believe
a
you
single
said that to
homeowner
him.
with assets
It was
of $350,000,
Well, someone had to tell him the truth.
$17,000 over the threshold, your pension reduces by about $51 per fortnight. You still get a pension, just a reduced one. The pension
country
only
that
cuts out
Australia
entirely
has
when
an
your assets
international
reach the
social
upper
security
threshold.
agreement
For a
with
single homeowner,
FIFAs.
that is around
But for most people born and
raised here, this is
For a couple,
straightforward.
about $1,102,500.
Third, Tuman, and this is
If
where
your
it gets
assets
more
are
complex.
below those upper figures, you are still
want-
receiving some pension, even if it is a partial amount. And a partial pension still comes with the pensioner concession card, which opens up a whole range of discounts on council rates, energy bills, public transport, and prescriptions. The card alone is worth hundreds, sometimes thousands, of dollars a year. If you do not own your home, if you rent, the thresholds are significantly higher. The full pension limit for a single non-homeowner is about $600,000, and the cutoff is just over $1 million. The system recognises that renters have higher living costs, so it allows a larger asset buffer before the pension starts to reduce. Now, the assets test is only one half of the equation. The other half is the income test, and that is where one of the most frustrating parts of the entire system, because Centrelink does not look at what your savings and investments actually earn. They assume you are earning a set percentage whether you are or not. I have done a full breakdown of exactly how deeming rates work and what they mean for your pension. It is worth understanding because the two tests interact in ways that surprise most people. But let me give you the key numbers here, because they matter for understanding how your pension is calculated. Under current rules, Centrelink applies a lower deeming rate of 1.25%.
The assets test looks at everything you own minus your debts and compares the total.
If you are single, or the first $110,600 for a couple. Everything above that amount is deemed at the higher rate of 3.25%. Those deemed amounts become your assessed income, regardless of what your bank is actually paying you. The income-free area, that is the amount of assessed income you can have before your pension starts to reduce, is $226 per fortnight for a single person and $396 per fortnight for a couple. Earn more than that in assessed terms, not necessarily in real terms, and your pension reduces by 50 cents for every dollar over the threshold if you are single, or 25 cents each if you are a couple.
Savings,
now,
your
here is where most
investments,
explanations
your
stop.
car, your
But there is
furniture,
a second layer
your
to this that
caravan,
changes
your
everything.
boat if you have.
And most people have never heard it. When Centrelink assesses you, they run your numbers through both the assets test and the income test. Whichever test produces the lower payment, that is what you get. So you might pass the assets test comfortably, but the income test brings your pension down, or vice versa. Understanding which test is the binding one for your situation is genuinely important because it changes which strategies make sense for managing your finances in retirement. And there is something else that connects directly to this: the way your superannuation interacts with your pension entitlement. Once you reach pension age, your super balance counts as a financial asset under the assets test, and it is subject to deeming under the income test. That means the structure of your super, how much is in accumulation versus pension phase, which investment option you are in, can affect your age pension calculation. That relationship between your super and your pension is something we have covered on this channel, because getting it wrong can cost genuine money over a retirement that might last 20 or 25 years. Right, now let me tell you what the age pension actually pays. Because this is the number most people want to know, and it is simpler than the rules that determine it. Under current rates, and pension rates are reviewed and adjusted in March and September each year, the maximum fortnightly payment for a single person is $1,200.90. That includes the base pension, the pension supplement, and the energy supplement. For a couple, the combined maximum is $1,810.40, which works out to $905.20 each.
Reduced one.
In annual terms,
the
that is
pension
roughly
only cuts out entirely
$31,200
when your
for a
assets
single
reach
person
the
and
upper
about
threshold.
$47,000 for a couple.
For a
That is the maximum, the full rate. If your assets or income reduce your payment, you receive less. Now, I want to pause here.
Single
because these
homeowner,
numbers
that is
deserve
around
more than just being read out. $31,000 a year for a single person. That is what the system considers a full pension. And if you're living in Sydney or Melbourne, paying council rates and insurance and electricity and putting petrol in the car
about
and buying groceries at Woolworths, $31,102,500. The pension is indexed, it goes up. But has it kept pace with the real cost of living? There is a growing gap between what the CPI says inflation is and what retirees actually
assets are below those upper figures.
That gap between
you are still receiving some pension chike,
unpacked step by step.
Even if it is
because
a partial
tell
amount.
A story that does not always
and a
match
partial
the headlines.
pension
Let
still
me walk
comes
you through a quick
with the
picture
pensioner
of what $31,000
concession.
a year looks like in practice. After council rates, insurance, electricity, gas, water, car registration, and basic health costs, you are looking at somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 a year just in fixed costs. That leaves
prescriptions.
$16,000 to $19,000
the card alone
food,
is worth hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars a
that
year.
Is about $350
if you do not
for everything. It is livable, but it is tight, and it requires careful management. This is why the pensioner concession card matters so much. If you receive any amount of age pension, even a reduced amount under the part pension, you receive the card.
The resonance
and the card
crystals are
gives
pulsing
you access
faster
to cheaper,
today.
PBS
Yes, I noticed. Processing
bulk billed
power must
GP
be at its
visits
peak.
where available, reduced council rates in many local government areas, state-based energy concessions and discounted public transport. In some states, particularly Victoria and Queensland, the concession value can add up to $2,000 or $3,000 a year. Now let me talk about how you actually apply, because this is the part that people put off the longest. The application is done through Services Australia, either online through your MyGov account or in person at a Services Australia office. You will need your identification, your bank details, details of all your assets and income, your superannuation statements, and proof of your living arrangements, whether you own, rent, or board. I will be honest,
Of the most frustrating parts of the entire
system, to be
system.
fully assessed,
Because
and the
Centrelink
forms
does
ask for a
not
level of
look
detail
at what
that
your
feels
savings
invasive.
and
Every bank account, every investment, the value of your car, the contents of your home, but it is worth doing properly, because errors or missing information can delay the process. If you want to get an estimate before you apply, Services Australia has an online estimator on their website, servicesaustralia.gov.au. It is not perfect, but it gives you a reasonable indication of what you might receive. And if you want to check whether you are receiving the correct rate after you have been assessed, we have done a step-by-step walkthrough of exactly how to do that
for your
through
pension
MyGov
daffy.
account, because the process
It is
not as obvious
worth
as it should be.
understanding
One more thing that
because
is worth
the
knowing,
two tests
you can apply for the age pension up to 13 weeks before you reach age pension age. You do not have to wait until your 67th birthday. And if you are still working at 67, which many Australians are, you can still receive the pension subject to the income test. Working does not automatically disqualify you. It just means your employment income is assessed alongside everything else. And if you're unsure about any of this, if the numbers are confusing, if the tests feel overwhelming, if you're not sure whether to apply now or wait, talk to a qualified, independent financial advisor, someone who charges a fee for advice, not a commission on a product. A good advisor can model your specific numbers and show you exactly where you stand. It is one of the best investments you can make at this stage of life.
Fortnight for a single person,
is the
and
full
$396 per fortnight
pension.
for a couple.
Who is eligible,
Earn more than
what
that.
the assets and income tests actually measure, how much the pension pays, what the pensioner concession card is worth, and how to apply. The key thing to take away is this: the system is not a cliff edge, it is a slope. You do not either get the pension or miss out entirely. Most Australians fall somewhere in between, receiving a part pension that supplements their super income and gives them access
50
to
cents for
concessions
every
that make a
dollar over
genuine
the
difference.
threshold if you are
But
single,
there is something else
or
worth
25
exploring,
cents each
something that
if you are a
connects
couple.
directly to what we have covered today. How much super you actually need to retire comfortably depends enormously on how much pension you are entitled to. The two numbers
Everything
are
tie,
linked.
and most
And when
people
you
have
see
never
them
heard
side
it.
by side, your super
When
balance
Centrelink
and your
assesses
pension
you,
entitlement,
they run your
the
numbers.
picture of your retirement income becomes much clearer than either number alone. That interaction between super and pension is one of the most important calculations in retirement planning, and it is something we have walked through with real numbers in another video, because the result surprises most people. If this helped make sense of something that felt confusing, share it with someone you know who has been staring at the Services Australia website and closing the laptop. Sometimes all it takes is someone explaining the system in plain language. And I'm curious, have you applied for the age pension yet? Or are you still in that stage of putting it off, not quite sure where to start? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.
Managing your
questions genuinely
finances
shape
in
what I
retirement.
cover next.
And there is something
Thumbnail
else
moment.
that connects directly
A laptop
to
open on a
this.
kitchen table, showing the Services Australia website, a pair of reading glasses resting beside it, a cup of tea gone cold, the moment before someone finally sits down and works out what they are entitled to.